So we now know the DEI policies are responsible for the FAA not having air traffic controllers, as they rejected more than 3,000 applicants who scored 100% on the assessment. This according to a lawsuit filed by Mountain State Legal. According to that lawsuit, over the last 3 years under the Biden administration, there have been more than 3,000 air traffic controllers who have applied to work for the FAA and scored 100% on the assessment. That means these people came in, took the test, didn't get a single thing wrong. They were the most qualified you could be. However, under the Biden administration's FAA DEI policies, they also had to take a second test called biographical data, where basically you're just listing your family's racial history. And based on the scores on that test, which again is just laying out your family's racial diversity, 3,000 of the people that scored perfect on the assessment weren't hired. They weren't hired because they weren't diverse enough. They weren't hired because they were white. More than 3,000 of the most highly qualified air traffic controllers you could have. And they weren't hired because they didn't have enough diversity in their family history. That's not only racist as shit. That's not only horrible policy, but it's also insanely stupid, especially when you think about the shortage of air traffic controllers we currently have. So yeah, we can blame DEI for our lack of air traffic controllers. Just another example of us finally getting the consequences of Joe Biden's failures.
You need a 24/7 declassification office, whatever you want to call it. Transparency, truth, whatever, I don't care. Sits in the White House, reports directly to you, and you take incoming from the United States of America. I want JFK. I want the 9/11 files. I want this. I want that. All the FBI, and this is a tool, this is something we didn't cover. What the deep state uses the most to cover up their corruption is an illegal application of the classification system.
Well, let's welcome live onto the program now Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist Ben Swann for his view on developments. Ben, good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Elon Musk has branded USAID a criminal organization. Is that just bombastic language being used, or is there something really substantial behind those big claims?
I think there's something very substantial behind those claims. This is the reporter who was just talking about USAID's very troubled and sketchy history. I think hit the nail on the head. Look, this is an organization that has operated in the shadows when it's supposed to be an organization that's operating in full transparency and sunlight. We know that it's not. And for years, if not decades, there have been American journalists and American citizens who have struggled to get answers as to what USAID really does. What is its mission around the world? Why does it have such a massive budget? And why is there no accountability for what it does around the world? And we heard Senator Joni Ernst there, who was specifically talking about this issue and said when she has tried in her congressional oversight authority to get answers from USAID, she was threatened by the organization. How dare you ask us questions, Congresswoman? How dare you ask questions of this organization? We should do whatever we want, Senator. That's the response. And so I think this is incredibly important. It also goes to show that when Trump got back into power this next time, right, his initial presidency was not remarkable the way the first 2 weeks of this presidency had been, and I believe continue to be, because what he has done and continues to do is he is reshaping American foreign policy and organizations that have operated with impunity for far too long.
Well, let's just talk on that, because USAID has repeatedly been accused of funding, as you say, anti-government movements across the world. Can we say the direction of travel as regards foreign policy actually is changing? Is this a seismic moment? Am I the optimist? Can this last?
So I think it is a seismic moment. And the reason this is so significant is simply this. There are many, many politicians who would run for office and promise to make sweeping changes. when you begin to gut the funding apparatus for how not just the last administration, but decades of American administrations have operated, what Trump has said over and over is that there is a deep state, terminology that Kash Patel, when he was in his confirmation hearings, was accused of using, and so many people in Washington despise this term deep state. What Trump has said for a long time, there is this deep state that's operating with impunity, and it outlasts every president, and it outlasts every administration. It is actually the one that's running foreign policy, running domestic policy in this country. When Trump has said that for a long time, again, many people could make the claim that, well, it's all talk. You say you're going to make changes, but what are you really changing? He is gutting the financial aspect. He's gutting the funding apparatus for these organizations. And this is why Washington is actually losing their minds. It's one thing to say we're going to have oversight. We're going to check on what they're doing. We're going to declassify documents. When you begin to fire people who work in those organizations, when hundreds of USAID workers are now out of a job, and as of today, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said, well, I am now in charge of USAID, and what remains of it, if anything will ultimately remain of it, we'll wait and see. It may not exist at all as an organization within a couple of months. But even if a little bit of it does remain, the fact that it's being brought under the U.S. Secretary of State and it's no longer being used by these other organizations, I think it's a monumental moment.
So you think it's basically gone because you've got Democrat lawmakers coming out in defense of USAID. You've got, as you say, the bureaucracy, that long-lasting red tape that goes back many decades in Washington. They don't want to see their jobs go. I understand your point of its remit is now under the State Department. But there's going to be bite back, isn't there? There's going to be a fight because there's so much money at stake here and so many jobs. People want to save their livelihoods.
Well, and it's not just the people who work there. Yeah, it's money for them. The real money is in all the NGOs around the world that have been reshaping the world in the image of what U.S. foreign policy has desired. They're the real losers in all of this because they're the organizations that have been able to siphon off hundreds of billions of dollars over decades in order to operate these coups in different countries around the world, in Ukraine, in Georgia, and the list goes on and on. And so what we know is happening is that these NGOs will probably be the ones, I would suspect, who would put up the biggest fight. They'll begin trying to fund politicians as much as they can to get pushback. Here's the problem with all of it is, again, what Trump has done in such a stealthy way so far in these first 2 weeks is he is also, at the same moment that he's making those moves, he is removing from positions of power so many people in Washington, D.C. In the last couple of days alone, we have seen former generals, former national security advisors, former members of the CIA and the NSA, not only having their classification status removed from them, but also having the right to even enter federal buildings taken from them. It is such a remarkable thing that's taking place in terms of he is not just removing the organizations. He is taking people who are known actors within those organizations who have unduly influence in Washington, who have oversized influence in the political sphere and in the corporate sphere. And he is basically rendering them completely useless to their usual position. So there's so much happening right now that we're watching Trump play chess while everyone else is playing checkers. That's what's happening right now. So they don't even see the moves he's making. He's making them 5 or 6 moves ahead of everyone else. And again, I can't stress this enough.
Sure.
To remove the funding apparatus is such a huge departure from anything that's been said in the past. The bottom line is we're talking about $50 billion with a B, $50 billion a year that will no longer be going out into the world, into the hands of NGOs to wreak havoc. It's pretty powerful.
Well, let's just delve into one of those big recipients for a moment, Ukraine, because Vladimir Zelensky says he doesn't know where around $100 billion of US money went. Where did it go? I'm sure American taxpayers would like to know.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating, isn't it? It's also kind of funny that we have been in this process of this Ukraine war now almost 3 years. And all this time, Zelensky hasn't questioned where the money is because he knows that the United States has dedicated almost $300 billion to him. There's almost 300 billion US taxpayer dollars that have been dedicated to your cause. And only now in the last week did you come out and say, you know, guys, I just realized something. We didn't get the money. Where did it go? How come Zelensky hasn't said anything until this moment that he doesn't know where the money is? Well, because the truth is he knows exactly what Ukraine has been, a gigantic money laundering scheme. And those of us as reporters who have covered it for the last 3 years, who have actually told the truth about what's happening in Ukraine, have been trying to tell the world that this is what's going on. It's a huge money laundering scheme. The weapons aren't going to Ukraine. They're going all over the world, including into Middle Eastern and African countries to destabilize governments there. We know that the money's not going there. It's going to defense contractors. It's going to companies like BlackRock that are now going to rebuild Ukraine in their own image. That's what's really happening right now. So the fact that Zelensky suddenly had this clarity moment where he says, bring in the accountants. Let's figure out, why don't we have any money? Or we've gotten so little of our money. Where is it really? I think that alone is reason enough for Trump to say, the war must end immediately. And not only that, but any money that's been committed to you, not only are we going to cut it off, right? We're going to start bringing back weapons and military equipment that's been sent to you, canceling all contracts. You don't even know where this money is. It's absolutely ludicrous.
Ben, can I just throw in a caveat to this particular story? Because Donald Trump has reportedly pointed at Ukraine's rare earth minerals as something he's interested in obtaining in exchange for aid. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Have Ukraine's natural resources, have they played their part in the fact American aid has gone to Ukraine, so much of it, for 3 years now?
I think it does. I think rare earth minerals, that's the new oil. It's the new natural resource that every country is vying for and is angling for. And we know the U.S. has an enormous interest in that because the U.S. is lagging far behind other countries, including behind China, not only in the having rare earth minerals, but being able to extract them. Right? We're way behind. And that is the U.S. interest in Greenland, is because of the rare earth minerals that are in the ground there, an enormous supply of them. It's why Trump wants and ultimately is going to take Greenland at some point, I believe. We know that that's why Bolivia was so focused on by USAID, by the way, because of rare earth minerals in the ground there. And so it makes sense that there would be an interest. You have to remember that it isn't just that Elon Musk is an advisor to the president on issues of Doge and government spending. Elon is a tech advantist and a tech futurist. He is interested in advancing and the future of tech. People like Peter Thiel are interested in advancing the future of tech. And in order to do that, especially when we're talking about AI, rare earth minerals are incredibly important. So there's no doubt in my mind that Trump is getting a lot of interest in and pressure from kind of the tech futurists around him who are saying, this is a country that has minerals we need. Places like Greenland, places like Ukraine. That's where he's going to be interested, but not because of his own interest, because of their interest, I believe.
Right, very well. It's something to closely follow, isn't it? Ben, thanks so much, as always, for your time, your thoughts on this. Founder of the Truth in Media, independent media organization, Ben Swann. Good to see you.
It's actually moved out of the rails.
Yes, I support the lady. Trump should cut everything completely. He shouldn't even make it 90 whatever days. He should cut it completely. We don't need it. It rather goes to other individuals, but not us. Please, he should cut it completely.